Hello and welcome to another episode of Transcontinental Overload. I'm Stephanie, your host, and I have a really big episode for you today. I'm sure you've all heard of the recent scandal in Florida where a school principal is a head teacher to you British listeners, at a Christian charter school was forced to resign because she showed her students the statue of David, and parents did not like that because they deemed the statue to be pornographic. Yeah, pretty crazy story, but not entirely crazy in a lot of states here in the US. Plus, of course, there have been all these discussions and changes, legislative changes to do with abortion in this country over the last couple of years, which is also pretty crazy. And, well, I don't really want to talk about that topic today, but we will be talking about sex, pornography, and sex education. So if you're listening to this episode in the car and your kids are with you, you might want to save this for later. You might want to listen to this by yourself first before you decide to share it. But this is also part of what we talk about. I am excited to welcome not only one, but two guests on my podcast today, and they are not exactly the shy kind when it comes to these issues. Julia and Jeremiah are both American. They're a couple, and they work as family, couples, and sex therapists, and they currently live in Utrecht, the Netherlands. What makes these two therapists particularly interesting to talk to is the fact that they both grew up in very repressive, controlling, ultra-conservative religious Christian communities, and they will talk about that. It was their own experience that made them decide, no, this is not working, this is not healthy, this is causing so much damage, that they decided to help others cope with the consequences of an upbringing like that. And actually, that's all I want to say at this point. Let's listen to Julia and Jeremiah's story. Welcome, Julia. Welcome, Jeremiah. I'm so happy to have you on Transcontinental Overload.
Thank you. This is exciting.
Yeah, it's so good. I really love talking to two people at a time. And also it's the two of you work together, and we'll come to that when we listen to your stories. So you're both American?
We're both Americans.
How about you just get right into it? Tell me who you are, where you live, and what you do.
Would you like to start?
I would love to start. So Julia and I are the co-hosts of the podcast Sexvangelicals. Our tagline is the sex education the church didn't want you to have.
Love it.
So we both grew up in different pockets of evangelical circles. I grew up in the South. Julia grew up in a tiny evangelical pocket in Western Massachusetts. And our work as couples therapists, as sex therapists, is quite connected to our religious affiliations, because the root of our religious affiliations is centered around the word don't.
I would say previous religious affiliations.
Thank you. Previous religious affiliations. So Julia and I met 5 years ago. Is that right? Time is a relative concept.
Also, that we have the pandemic in there. It's kind of, there's a big time warp. I feel that no one. It could have been 10 years. It could have been 1 year. No one really knows.
So we met around work and found pretty quickly that we had common interests in the intersections between religion, conservative religion, and our interests as sex therapists. Began talking professionally, and that very quickly moved into a romantic relationship too. And out of that, we decided to do a podcast that provided sex education and relationship education that we both missed out on in our religious institutions, and also some of the things that we commonly see our clients come in to talk with us about. And as we're now in our close to our third year of Sexvangelicals, and as we grow, there are more opportunities, of course, to grow the podcast. So we're hoping to morph it into some coaching and some other business opportunities too. So what else would you add?
Ooh, that's a good summary of our work together. Since this is a podcast about expat life, I will add that we currently live in Utrecht, the Netherlands.
Yep.
So how did you end up in the Netherlands? Especially like working in this sector, and we'll probably come to talk about that, but because your clients are, I expect in your practice, are American.
That's correct.
Yes. That's a great question. And I answer this question differently every time, because in expat circles, or even outside of expat circles, understandably, people are really curious about the reasons that a person or a family or a couple might move to another country. So it is a great question. And it is a question that has so many different answers depending on the context and depending on the day. I'll start by saying because we wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important because for so much of my life, particularly growing up in a highly controlling and religiously abusive environment, want was not a word that really existed in my personal vocabulary. So to be able to make a choice, particularly a big life choice based on want, without needing to defend or explain it, was and still is a really powerful type of experience. That being said, we also have a myriad of reasons aside from want that led us here. One being that during the course of the pandemic, the lives of therapists changed so drastically.
Mm-hmm.
And we switched almost exclusively to virtual work. Although before moving to the Netherlands, I was seeing clients in person again. And the way that licensing works, we are able to see our Massachusetts clients while we are in another part of the world. And although I really miss the magic of in-person connection, we were at a time of transition individually, together, professionally, and moving ourselves literally and figuratively outside of the context of our lives was something important for individual and relational exploration.
I know what it feels like to have to reinvent yourself in a way, have a completely new environment. So a lot of the parameters that you kind of that make up who you are, and it's like a background that all fall by the wayside, and you have that sense of freedom, which is amazing. I mean, it can be scary too, but also very amazing. And I think, well, you said the word want wasn't one that you were familiar, you weren't really brought up with that, but I think that moment of saying, actually, I want to do this is so scary, right?
It is.
And to actually be like, do I really want this, or is this something that someone else wants? And because I feel like when you haven't been able to express that need and want, it's really difficult to actually establish where it's coming from.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good point.
Absolutely. I'm thinking about a conversation that I had with a friend, Allegra, who was a very close friend of mine who moved out of Boston before Jeremiah and I moved. And she moved to another state, not another country, but still a very similar process of uprooting and rerouting, and the whole host of emotions that come with that desire and fear and a million others. And I remember something that she said to me was, not everybody gets to create a clean slate for themselves.
Yeah.
And that stood out to me. I haven't moved a whole lot of times in my life, but I've moved enough. And I sometimes forget, and I'm not someone who typically is like unaware of advantages that I have, but I forgot until my friend said that, like, oh, yeah, not everybody gets the choice or the chance to uproot and reroute. And we're really lucky to be able to do that, even with some of the pain involved in that decision and following that decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think especially it's a time when you are moving and you have that clean slate. It's when you really need to get to know yourself and your own needs and wants, because I feel that that's such a big part, where that's why I said earlier, it's like you're kind of unsure what you really, where's this coming from? Is it really me? Or, you know, the slightest thing that someone else might say to you, you'll be doubting yourself. So that's a really strong thing to say, I want to do this, and then to do it, and then to be like, okay, and now I get to create the life I want to create. So that's, yeah.
Well, and it's also really interesting doing this in our 30s as well. So typically the narrative is you go out, you explore your identity when you're in your early 20s, college age, gap years, things like that. The cultures that Julia and I both grew up in, the evangelical communities, really discourage that sense of identity exploration in 20s. There's a movement towards you get married, you get a job, you grow up really, really quickly. And for some folks, that works for 40, 50 years. For some folks that works for a decade. Julia and I both kind of fall in that category. For us, that narrative at some point that stopped working. Both of us had a loss of the opportunity to really explore ourselves and also explore the complexities of the world, and to live in different and to live in international spaces and to engage in the world that way. So also really enjoyed having the opportunity to do that. To explore the world at large, and also like different parts of myself, and to watch you, Julia, explore different parts of yourself.
So how long has it been? How long have you been in the Netherlands now?
Less than a year. Will be 1 year in June, but we didn't move into the apartment where we are currently living until mid to end of July. What feels a short and a long time all at the same time. More short than long.
Yeah.
And so why the Netherlands, and what was the kind of ultimate push for you to say that that's what we want to do? Was it like a gradual idea that was developing, or was it like a one event, or just something that?
So two reasons come to mind. The first one is well, Julia, you're Dutch, or your family is Dutch. Your grandparents are World War II Dutch refugees. So that was a significant player, and curious how you wanted to talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, the reason for the Netherlands also is multifaceted. On a purely practical level, we learned that for non-students and non-folks coming for a specific job, the Netherlands is most likely the easiest place for an American to get a short-term 2-year visa. Now, I will say that immigration, even under the quote unquote easiest of circumstances, is a whole mess.
Yeah.
So not easy, but the easiest probably compared to other places. So there were just very practical reasons for choosing the Netherlands. It is centrally located for us to do some other travel, particularly travel for hiking. The language component is a very complicated one, but it is in English, a highly English speaking country.
Yeah, probably way more than some other European countries.
Yes,
Right.
which has been such an interesting journey that we could possibly discuss later, because the English speaking part has really been like a double-edged sword. But on a like deeply personal level, being here is also for me to connect with cultural roots.
Yeah.
My dad is Dutch, his family is Dutch, and that is a part of my background that received very little attention, partly due to the traumatic experiences that my grandparents experienced. They're actually immigrants, not refugees, but
excuse me.
Just in case anybody was listening and wanted to fact check that.
Yeah.
They immigrated after the end of World War II, Canada, and then to the United States. But I still have relatives here, very close to where we are living, and it was quite important for me to go back to the place where I have literally come from, particularly as I am trying to reclaim different kinds of narratives, particularly narratives from my family of origin. Mm-hmm. Being here as a Dutch person who is not culturally Dutch, who does not speak the language, has been actually a pretty grief-oriented process for me.
Yeah.
And I hope over the next year will be healing, but right now it has, I think, been more sad and complicated and confusing than healing yet.
Oh, healing takes a long time, doesn't it?
It sure does.
I think especially in your case, and I mean so many people who were either refugees or immigrants at the time, there's so much trauma from that time that, as we know now, and I mean, you as therapists obviously know a whole lot more than me, but looking into intergenerational trauma and things like that, where you are, you know, sometimes there are things that you can't explain, and you're like, why is this such an issue in our family, even though we're in the now, we're not living at that time, but so many things just get passed on, and I imagine there's a whole lot to discover and process, and yeah, I mean, I think it's I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but fairly recent concept that someone has to start the healing in the whole family, and any kind of, because you don't just heal yourself, you attempt to heal what was there before, and so making sure that it's at some point this healing process is happening in a way that future generations are not exempt from it, but it's all kind of part of the family narrative.
Right. Absolutely. Right. I've been a part of a training earlier this week for work, and one of the themes yesterday was around essentially intergenerational trauma from a specific therapeutic model. And both yesterday and today, I had a lot of feelings as I was sitting in my Netherlands apartment, in not the literal town, but the literal country, where quite a bit of family, both trauma and resilience, originated.
Yeah. It's so fascinating. My almost 17-year-old just recently started to be really interested in family trees, and so my family's in Germany and my husband's family's in the UK, so she's looking at both family trees and then asking questions, and I love it. It's such a healthy process, and so I think it's fascinating because we are not just who we are.
Yeah,
there's a whole history,
right?
Yeah.
So then so your family were immigrants, and then where did the religious background, all that come from? How did that come into play? Because I mean, obviously the United States is such a melting pot of all these immigrants, refugees, and everyone's kind of creating something. But yeah, so how was that? How did that happen?
I can share my family background since it's a little bit more connected to being here, and then you can share yours.
Yeah, great.
I have thought about that in recent years and been a bit baffled because neither side of my family were highly religious to my understanding and the way that my family was. My mother grew up culturally Lutheran, but that was not highly embedded into her growing up experiences as she described it to me. And my mother is American and grew up in the States. She had, as she described it to me, a conversion experience in college that moved her into an evangelical world that seemed to become more controlling as she moved from college into early adulthood. My dad's family were Christian, and I am not remembering in this moment what denomination they were, but my dad also did not describe it in any kind of fundamental way. I do think that my dad's family's relationship with Christianity was more integrated into their lives, but more on a personal level. So my dad would say that sometimes he would wake up and see his father, my opa, praying or reading the Bible in the morning, but it was very much like in his corner, quiet. There wasn't this, to my knowledge, kind of born again, high control religion. And to the best of my knowledge, my dad's family's relationship with religion was actually probably a strong protective factor, having experienced just massive traumas for both my Oma and my Opa. And I do think that that was part of their survival and part of the community in a way that I see actually as very, very beautiful. And then when my parents met and got married and eventually moved to Massachusetts in the States where I was born, they moved into a fundamentalist Baptist community. And so sometimes I'm quite sad when I think about the way that religion could and was so foundational for my dad's family, seemed neutral-ish for my mom. And then my brothers and I grew up in quite a different religious world.
So you'd say that was coming more from the community that you lived in rather than from your nuclear family?
Yes, the communities that my nuclear family chose to embed themselves in. It was an independent Baptist church, and at the very least controlling. And many people who I grew up with would describe it as psychologically and religiously abusive.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, just thinking about that transition, Julia, from Dutch-centric religion, and I don't have a lot of historical data on kind of Dutch religious traditions, but the distinction between Dutch religious traditions, even conservative religious traditions, and like American religions, like the evangelical movement, especially the Southern Baptist movement, is very much an American idea. So yeah, I'm interested in that too. My story is a little bit different. So I am actually an adopted person. So my ethnicity is in the Basque country, in northern Spain. I know very little about my family of origin, and was adopted in Texas in the mid 80s. My parents are strongly religious people connected with kind of a subgroup within connected with the evangelical group. But the adoption agency actually that my parents got me from was connected within my religious denomination. So religion is very much a part of what I've grown up in. So my experience is kind of rooted in this idea of growing up in these in these very American white spaces, while also being the brown kid who's passing as white. We assume that my family of origin came from Spain to Mexico to the U.S. That's typically the immigration pattern within the Basque diaspora that exists in Texas. But yeah, it's been really interesting, Julia, to hear you and to watch you kind of navigate the loss of Dutch culture, of Dutch not being spoken in your household. A couple of years ago, Julia and I hiked the Camino de Santiago and did the Camino del Norte. And the starting spot in that is about 20 miles east of San Sebastian, which is one of the kind of key cities.
So you walked through Basque country.
Yeah, you know.
And people were talking to me in Spanish. I have a tattoo that's in Euskera on my arm. Maybe people were talking to me in Euskera. I have no idea, because Euskera is a completely different language. But it was a bizarre experience to spend a week and a half walking through the Basque country, through San Sebastian, through Guernica, which, speaking of World War II trauma, is kind of a central location of World War II trauma with Spain. the correlation between the Frankista or the Franco era and the Hitler generation. And to like, I had these experiences of like, I know like on some sort of like intellectual level that like these are like my people, that this is like where I come from, but not having any sort of emotional connection.
Yeah,
to the place was a really, really bizarre experience. But was also a driving factor, I think, especially when COVID came around, in talking with Julia about, hey, like, let's travel more, let's do more exploration. And then when COVID came around, and recognizing that our work's going to be virtual, we can live anywhere in the world. Like, let's invest in living somewhere in Europe.
So I'm curious. So you both had a very religious upbringing, whether direct family or just your surroundings. How was that in terms of school? Because I mean, I get, so having lived in Texas as well, I'm very familiar with the system, and not that religion is actually taught as a subject at school, but it certainly has a huge impact on things like sex education. And so, I mean, I found it really shocking actually when we moved there to see what was actually included and what wasn't, and how much, or how pretty much non-existent that is.
Sure. Well, and starting in the early 90s, especially, there was bukus of money, hundreds of millions of dollars in U.S. government developed grants that were specifically designed for nonprofits and education systems to teach abstinence-only education. So
that was Bush, Reagan.
It started, rumblings of this started in the Reagan administration. The first Bush administration was the one that kind of got it going. Interestingly, the Clinton administration played a big role in this. So in 1994, the Clinton, went back up in 1994, there was a group called True Love Waits, which is a nonprofit that created very quickly, I might add, a lot of literature around abstinence only, religiously informed sex, quote unquote, education, if you want to call that education. And at the center of that were purity pledges. So this is marketed to teenagers, and teenagers were encouraged to sign these pledges that say, I vow to wait until marriage to have sex. So somehow or other, the evangelical groups in the 80s and 90s were ridiculous organizers. There were 200,000 of these certificates that were planted in the front lawn of Capitol Hill.
What?
And President Clinton saw this and said, hey, you know what? There's a lot of movement around this. He's from Arkansas, of course.
Yeah, he's a Southerner.
And it was actually the Clinton administration that gobs of money began moving into in 96, 95, 96, somewhere like that was the first big piece of legislation.
Wow, I had no idea.
That sponsored state and nonprofit driven abstinence-only education. And so that starts in the mid 90s. So you have an entire generation or two, the millennials, late Gen Xers, and now we're seeing this happening in the Gen Z generation as well, who have been exposed to this. And so something that Julia and I talk about is the language that I use is, you don't have to have grown up in the church to have been screwed over by the church, because all 50 states have accepted government money to promote abstinence-only education in either their school systems directly or in nonprofits that are closely connected with adolescent education.
I mean, it's, in a way, it's like an easy way out, isn't it? For schools as well, to kind of cling to that, because it's much easier to just teach, don't do it, rather than actually explain. I mean, and just kind of hide behind that. And I guess a lot of parents just ignorant of the fact that it's not taught at school, or just also hiding behind the whole church thing?
Or fearful.
Always. I mean, the whole thing. I think the whole abstinence is best. That's all fear-based. I mean, there's nothing else. Control, fear. But why else? Well, and I mean, to someone, and as I said earlier, we lived in Texas, so I'm familiar with what's taught and what isn't. I was really shocked because I didn't realize that my role was so much more important as a parent, because I was expecting a certain amount of sex education to happen at school. It's always you want to think about what you say and how you teach or how you talk to your children about it. But there's just nothing from school. It's a whole, like, where do I even, I had no idea. And then
exactly.
And then maybe your children are the ones who have discussed this at home, but their friends haven't, and it's a whole minefield.
Yeah,
but
good way to describe it.
Great way to describe it. Well, it's interesting, Stephanie, thinking about the ways that different countries think about sexuality. So there's a book that Julia and I reference to a lot called "Not Under My Roof" by Amy Shallett. So this is a book that's a cross-cultural study between family structures and parenting structures in the U.S. and parenting systems and structures in the Netherlands. And in the sex therapy community, the Netherlands and Canada are seen as the two countries that are the closest anyway to kind of having it together. And
wow, Canada right next to the US with a lot of cultural similarities and references. Wow, I had no idea. Oh well.
Yeah. So the idea in Not Under My Roof is in the Netherlands, what will happen is you have a teenager that is interested in dating, and there's some conversations between the teenager and the parents will say, "Hey, I've noticed that you've been really interested in that this relationship with whoever you're dating is getting serious."
And sorry, not that I want to interrupt, but also that teenager in the Netherlands has had sex education at school, and mostly, in like physical descriptions and terminology. So they have a vocabulary, they have a good understanding, at least physically, what is happening. So by the time this teenager gets to that age where the parent notices, you can talk to that teenager on a whole different level. As a parent.
Exactly. And so what will commonly happen then is the parent will say, "Hey, that sounds great. If you want to invite your partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever language you want over, just let us know. We'll get out of here. We'll buy you some condoms. We'll set up lube for you, and you can have a sleepover." And often what will happen is the parents will negotiate that over the phone. "Hey, I know Bobby has been hanging out with Lucy a little bit more. Oh yeah, Lucy's been telling me a lot about Bobby. Hey, great. We're happy to set up a spot to have Bobby and Lucy hang out, to have a sexual experience. That sounds great." And then that will be like negotiated in some capacity in some settings by parents. I tell American parents about this, and American parents lose their shit. They're like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
It would never, ever happen. And one of the things that Shallot talks about then is that in a Dutch setting, there is a control that happens through connection, that because there's such a strong relationship and such a curious relationship between a Dutch parent and their teenagers, and that conversation is about, "Hey, like, this sounds hard. How do you want to solve this problem? How can I help you?"
Yeah.
And like the encouragement of like critical thought, critical thinking skills, that actually creates a sense of control, of safety. Whereas in the US, the opposite happens. The language that Shallot uses is the purpose of connection is to control. So connect to control. So American parents often ask about, well, when are you coming home? What's your curfew? And the assumption of the world and the more in the last like 5-10 years with the increase in like things like mass shootings and things like that, understandably so, but rooted in this like fear that the world is a dangerous place, that sex is a dangerous thing. And so the conversations between an American parent and a teenager is about control. Are you safe? Do you have this? Can I do this for you? Those types of things. So, and yeah, like structures like abstinence only education reinforce that. Through I can speak for myself in my own like education. We just actually had a couple of podcast episodes about this regarding sexually transmitted infections and how to talk about that. We had a friend of ours talk with us about that. And in my education, we learned a lot about STIs, but we learned about them with the intention of, here's how like scary they are. Here's how damaging these can be to your long-term relationships, and don't have sex because you might get gonorrhea.
Yeah.
And then you might, not have a child.
You might get HIV. And this is kind of rooted in like the HIV scare and propagandizing that the Reagan administration uses in the early 80s.
I mean, to me, it's the most baffling difference, I think, in like there's so many differences in parenting and school systems and all that, but that is just, it doesn't to a European who's grown up. And I mean, even back when I was a teenager, it was absolutely normal for me to have my boyfriend over, and it was all the parents, the same as the Dutch parents. They were very encouraging of it. They were like, well, they're teenagers, so they're gonna have sex whether we want them to or not. That was just they were more concerned that we were like mentally, emotionally ready. So they wanted to be just making sure that we felt safe. No fear. No fear. And I mean, it's I think it's the totally normal. Everyone I knew had kind of lost their virginity at either their own home or their partner's home in a kind of safe environment. I mean, obviously that I can't generalize, but on the whole, that was the assumption. Right. And you didn't have to run out at lunch break in high school and do it in the car.
Right. Yeah. And then I actually appreciate what you were saying about parents within your adolescent community being concerned about a social and emotional well-being, because parents in the States are so driven to prevent any kind of sexual contact that they actually invest in the social and emotional development that is a necessary part of engaging sexuality, an important part of the growth process.
Which is why nobody knows what consent means.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So coming back to sex education at school, if you even can call it that, and the fact that in high school you have to take 1 semester of health education. You can also choose to take that in middle school. So when you're about 12 or 13. You can do that, and then it's done. You don't have to have it ever again until you graduate. It's the graduation requirement is just a 1 semester. And so clearly they're not covering all these important issues.
What does health mean?
Like what is exactly. So that includes nutrition and personal hygiene and just the absolute basics, but absolutely not anything like consent.
Or pleasure, probably.
Right.
No, of course. I mean, like,
please.
And also, they had to. I remember having to sign papers all the time that they were asking parents to give their consent to their child being exposed to sex education, or
or a PG-13 film in which there may be a sex scene.
Everything had to be censored, and you had to get parents' consent, and then obviously the flip side of that is, and as I said, it's like teenagers will, because they're human beings, they have the curiosity and the needs and the wants and the desires. So what other choices do they have? They have to get some sort of information. And so the only thing that is widely available is pornography. And then you end up with that having a completely different function.
Sure.
So you're 11 or 12 years old and you haven't had any sex education, but your friend has access to porn, of course you're going to watch it.
Well, porn is designed to be entertainment, but in a system that doesn't teach youth about sexuality, porn becomes sex education.
Exactly. So what parents, I think, still are oblivious to the fact that it is so widely available. And so a lot of the times there's no discussion about what it actually is, and the fact that it is not education.
Right.
And I mean, in an ideal world, you want your child to have healthy sexual experiences maybe before being exposed to porn.
True.
But since that is highly unlikely, I think there has to be a discussion about it at the very least.
Right.
Right.
But the fact that they are very young kids, maybe not even teenagers, using it as sex education is so scary.
It's scary and has such dangerous implications.
Yeah. And I'm guessing, I mean, you in your work as sex therapists, you see the fallout from it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing to consider is the way that eroticism works. So eroticism, who wrote the book?
Jack Moore.
Jesus. So there's a sex researcher named Jack Moran who writes about eroticism, and he suggests that eroticism is attraction plus obstacles. And what greater way to create obstacles for teenagers than abstinence-only types of initiatives? And so what's actually happening is that teenagers, back up, what's actually happening is that abstinence-only initiatives create more of a sense of these types of erotic, really intense, really quick-moving, often sexual experiences that don't have a lot of forethought, that don't have a lot of planning to them. So teenagers are moving into sexual experiences, often kind of rooted by what they see in porn, and the outcomes of those sexual experiences are absolutely devastating.
Sure. So I would say sexuality is complicated in any context, even under the best of circumstances. And if you're in a context, as we've described, in which a teenager can be in hopefully the safety of their home emotionally and physically, then they actually are forced in good ways to develop the skills around eroticism rather than relying on these barriers that they probably aren't seeing as
barriers,
as
good point,
sexually charged, barriers. And I have a client who is not American, but of course lives in the States, coming from a European country. And he was telling me how strange it was to have these experiences with American students talking about sexuality growing up. And he was saying, gosh, I think my mom prevented me from a sexual debut because she was always like, do you want to talk about sexuality? Let's talk about condoms and lube, and maybe your girlfriend, do you think she would benefit from a vibrator? And he would be like, Mom, stop. It was it actually turned me off from sex. And it's just this funny example that parents who are so afraid of sexuality with their teenagers are actually probably like fueling a sexual debut so much faster.
Right.
And
so much more impulsively too, without the sense of planning that might come into a more sexually effective experience.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, how satisfactory can it be to be 15 and sneaking out at lunchtime and have a quickie in the car? I mean, this is probably not at that point, if this is your first sexual experience, not sure how
right. And particularly for young girls and women who have different socializations. Yeah, they have different socializations. They have different layers of safety and injustice to consider. And as you were mentioning about the documentary from Texas, Peggy Orenstein, who's also a sexuality educator and researcher, talks about how young girls grow up considering their sexuality through the lens of the male gaze. And so particularly when porn, it becomes sex education, and particularly when quote unquote mainstream porn caters towards like male socialization around fantasy, that's a much harder blow towards girls, and continues to perpetuate all kinds of sexual and gender inequity.
Absolutely. It becomes so ingrained. And it's really the only way out of that is open discussion, and with everyone, parents, educators, and teenagers. And yes, it's awkward, but it's really the only way.
And open discussion that thinks of sex as a process.
Yeah.
As something that's an ongoing experience, as opposed to did you have sex or did you not have sex? Are you a virgin or are you not a virgin? Some of these
what's your number? What's
your number?
But I mean, you're saying clearly for girls and young women, because the implications, I guess, are much worse, because there could be such horrendous consequences. And then you add the whole abortion debate and all that sort of stuff, which we don't really need to go into at this point. But I also feel for young boys. I mean, my conversations with my girlfriends who have sons, they are absolutely terrified of what happens to the boys' mentality and the socialization. It's terrible.
Well, and we were, I forget if this was a podcast episode or if I heard this from a colleague of mine, but I heard someone or other mentioning, talking about with 8th and 9th graders about just what are some themes that are coming up. And one of the consistent themes that teachers mentioned was Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
And Andrew Tate's kind of rampaging through England and wherever the hell he is these days, hopefully in jail, and in the US, and the fact that he and other influencers have used TikTok as a strategy for creating these hyper masculine messages, and his target is exclusively 12, 13, 14-year-old boys.
Yeah.
Teachers who are describing these really confrontational, extremely inappropriate experiences and interactions between the teenage boys. Like, well, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. I don't have to listen to you. I don't need to go to school. Very much rooted in Andrew Tateism, where openly discourages boys from attending college. And we've got to be aware of those messages that are targeted towards young teenagers in 2022, 2023. And there's a lot of Andrew Tate imitators, even since he's
absolutely. That's not going anywhere. It's like, even if he goes away, there'll be others, because they've been bred.
Right.
Have you watched Euphoria?
I have not, but I keep hearing about it.
But there's this one scene where this couple having sex and the boy is choking the girl. And she's like, what are you doing? Can you stop doing that? And he's like, he keeps trying. And she's like, I don't, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I thought that's what I had to do. That's what expected. And it's such a poignant scene because he so clearly didn't want to do that. Just a very kind of mild example of what's going on. But that just stuck with me, that scene, because it's so, God, no one knows what they're doing, because no one knows actually what they want and what they need, because they haven't been brought up to learn this. And this brings us back to your point at the very beginning, Julia, where you're like, you were not brought up with the word want.
Yeah.
So if you have kids who don't develop a sense of what's good for them and what's bad for them, and who are not encouraged to express that or to be heard when they say, I don't want to do this, that's the whole crux, isn't it? I mean,
right. Yeah.
So yeah.
I have lots of thoughts about this. Yeah, one of the things that Julia and I are considering, and I'm sure a lot of people within your audience are considering too, are, do we go back to the U.S.?
Mm-hmm.
And if we go back to the U.S., what are some of the things that are waiting for us there, particularly should we have kids? Should we engage in the school systems? And thinking about how different of an experience that might be. Then should we stay in the Netherlands? And there are things that our kids would have to like navigate. Having parents who don't speak Dutch, and I don't.
But I mean, so both mine, well, one's almost 17, the other one's 20. They've both said pretty explicitly that they will not have children in the US. They do not want to raise a family in the US. Both of them, having gone through the US school system.
Wow.
And both actually to this day say that the most sex education they've had in school was the 1 year they spent in the UK about 5 years ago. That's what they said, which is quite strong. And it's kind of...
But great that your kids have such incredible critical thinking skills and have had the experience living in different places. And I know, going back to perhaps more of the expat theme, I know that not everybody, as we discussed at the beginning, has the opportunity alone with a partner or with kids to live in multiple different places. And I respect the legitimate barriers. For example, like someone your sister has. I won't share that on air because it's private, but many people can't. And I respect that. And that being said, my conversations with friends, either here in the Netherlands or back in the States, are so different with my friends who have lived either internationally or in multiple spaces in the country.
Right.
Than my friends. And I have many friends who have lived in one state their entire lives. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. However, it's such a strong value for me as an individual, for our family system, and for our kids as much as possible to be in as many spaces as you can realistically be in, because I believe that it makes you a better person.
Agreed.
And I've struggled so much to connect with my friends who haven't had multiple different geographical locations. I'm talking with my very close friend, Grace, on Sunday night. She's lived out of the country. She's lived in multiple spaces in the States, and being able to talk about the beauty and the challenges of expat life is so much easier with her. I have another friend who recently moved to a different spot, and she said, and she's made some non-traditional choices in her life. And she said, I just want to have conversations with people who want to explore my life choices. I don't want to explain them. And so going back to the very beginning of the conversation about what does it mean to want something, particularly when you've lived in communities that have prescribed your wants or haven't given you the opportunity to explore that. I've noticed myself in some friendships, particularly those who haven't had many kind of cultural or geographical experiences, feeling like I don't have to necessarily explain or defend why I'm in the Netherlands, but I have to explain or defend what's hard or why I'm struggling or what I love or why I wouldn't come back, which is such a different experience with my other friends, which I could just say like, oh, today I never want to go back to the States, or, oh, I'm in this weird time zone, or, the good, the bad, the in between. And so all that, the long-winded way of saying that I admire that your children who are 16 and 20 have had such a diverse range of experiences that are going to inform their adult choices in such like beautiful ways that I want for our future kids that so many people in my life haven't had or haven't pursued.
It's true. They probably had to put up with a lot of things that other people their age haven't had to even think about. And also going through some really, really bad experiences.
Sure.
But yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But then sometimes I'm very hopeful because I also see that there's a whole lot of activism happening in this whole area. And again, this is, we broached social media a tiny bit because obviously it can be used in all sorts of ways, but it also means on the positive side that American kids are also exposed to the whole world. And there are a ton of, I hate the word, but influencers, for example, coming from Europe, and they are much more exposed to other viewpoints, and people are saying, oh, you Americans this is crazy, and this is how we do it in Europe, and not coming from like an educational authoritative figure, but from peers. There's like German kids, Dutch kids, Danish kids who will put content out. And so I have this hope that this generation, the Gen Zs, are actually changing things. And I've seen this in my kids' schools where the girls organized a walkout. And they would be encouraging people to speak up about, sexual harassment or worse, and people would be like, okay, and starting to talk about it and saying, it's not okay. And it's not okay to go to a party and that your chances of being raped are probably about 70%, which is insane. And they're talking about it. They're not keeping it quiet. They are talking about it. And there's a lot of parents also who encourage it. And so I see let's get the conversation going. Let's sit with schools and let's actually not just pretend it's not happening. So I feel like I do have hope.
Yeah.
Like you guys, millennials, we're talking about all the generational things. I'm a Gen X, so we're not going to change the system, but we are kind of, well, my kids we're raising kids who are and who are no longer taking all this as a given. And so that gives me a lot of hope. And I think that's where the global side comes in as well, because I've
told Jeremiah and another friend of mine so often that it's sometimes on like my days that feel hopeless, either individually or working in therapy and just being so like entrenched in some of the darkness of the world, my Gen Z clients are sometimes the people that I'm like, I am not giving up on like my career or the world, because like the 21-year-olds I think are going to like save us. And like they inspire how inspiring they can be.
I know, they're amazing. Yes. Raising your hand and saying, that's not okay. I'm not okay with this. This is huge, because we were all taught to not do that.
Sure. Well, so I think that, to go back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, there's dialogue happening, but it's happening on virtual spaces. And one of the things that we're seeing with Gen Zers, sex therapists, for instance, is that even though Gen Zers are more competent in kind of writing about and thinking about some of the more like sexually comprehensive values that Julia and I espouse to, and that the field of sex therapy espouses to. They're actually having fewer sexual experiences. And one of the challenges that's happening, and one of the things that we're like researching, is the impact of virtual communication, the impact of communicating through text, communicating through Snapchat, like communicating and developing a sexual experience through a virtual platform, through an avatar, is a very, very different experience than navigating it in a human to human, in a live
That's such a good point.
And so, Leah, you said that, one of our family values is that when we have kids, if you choose to go to college, like, you're not going to college in the same state. Like, get out of here, go visit somewhere else. If you go out of the country, hey, that's fantastic too. But anything that we can do to encourage kids to move into more live spaces, I think is fantastic.
I'm so with you on that. Yes.
I think that's the strength of the expat journey.
Yes.
Is that like Julia, you and I have like implanted ourselves into a different culture. And we don't have a ton of friends here, but we have some like face-to-face connections that we're building, like done that with your family, right? That gets people out of like the virtual reality lived experience of seeing like German kids and Danish kids like talking through TikTok about their experiences, and launches them into face-to-face interaction with people who have different lived experiences. And through those dialogues, through those face-to-face types of dialogues, that some of the skills required to have like really, really good sexual experiences, some of the negotiation skills, being able to sit with our own anxieties in the presence of somebody else, that's where that really begins to develop.
Oh, totally. Yeah. But also even just basic chemistry. You with someone, and you might really like someone online and have established a real emotional connection. But you don't know if you good on a chemistry level, I mean, just on a there's so much that happens in any sort of face-to-face personal, God, what's the word, in person.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And even or talking, having a discussion and seeing someone's body language and feeling someone's anger maybe, or someone, and how their face changes. There's so much that gets lost on a screen.
Yeah. And I think that travel can be a way, and families, again, the resources to do this, encouraging travel throughout their country, throughout the world. Again, if they have the resources to do that, I think that's one way to begin breaking that trend and creating more interactions with face-to-face people.
Being uncomfortable, traveling by yourself and going somewhere and having to navigate a train and having to ask people for help and that sort of thing, right? That feeling of, oh my God, I don't want to do this, I just want to go back home. But then not going back home, but actually powering through is, Right.
The expat life can look so glamorous, or there is a facade of it being glamorous, and there are parts of it that are, but a lot of it is like going to the grocery store and not knowing how to pay for your food, and not having a friend, and all these other,
just like you said, it's the physical practicalities, because everyone is so used to everything being comfortable. So this is one of the big, this is when I sound really old, where it's like, everyone has it too easy. But we're so used to, you want food, you can order it, someone delivers it, you don't have to talk to anyone, you don't have to go anywhere, all these kind of things. And they're so used to it. But like you said, the practicalities of just getting up, leaving your house, going to a store and buying something, having to interact is,
Yeah, and I think
Absolutely.
it's an experience that's hard to understand if you haven't ever lived somewhere else,
Mhm.
especially internationally, but even moving to another part of a country
Mhm.
is a disorienting experience when you uproot, reroute, deconstruct, reconstruct. And as hard as it is, intentionally putting myself in places that are uncomfortable is something that I value because it makes me a better human being.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's empathy. It grows exponentially when you have been there yourself.
Yeah. No, well said. Yeah.
The screens are not a replacement for sure, but still, I'm hopeful that there's just so much more awareness. And again, it's such a trope, but the pandemic has, I think, improved things in some ways in that respect of just general awareness of emotional needs,
Yeah.
mental health, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, as much as it feels like we're just going back to, I don't know, the Middle Ages. But I think there is progress underneath all that. So
Yeah.
we've kind of vilified the US a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like
That's
this is let's try and conclude on a more like lighthearted level.
Oh,
great.
sure.
Just to kind of wrap it up, because I realize we're going way over time. But I mean, this discussion, I think we could probably talk for hours.
Sure.
Of course.
Great.
Like I said, we've been bashing the US quite a bit, and I mean, rightly so. But obviously, there's positives too, right?
Oh, sure.
So-
Like bathrooms that you don't have to pay for. I was going to ask if you're okay with me asking you a question. When you've lived and you've lived in Germany, the UK, the States, have you lived in other countries as well? I know you've
No.
lived in multiple places within the States.
No.
I suppose to give a little bit of friendliness to the States. When you've been in Germany and the UK, were there things about the States, like big or small, that you missed?
Oh my gosh. Obviously,
What were some
and
of the things that you missed?
it's the ease of talking to people.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
being in general being very open and friendly and interested, and it's just asking questions, and whether you I don't know, you on a train or you're trying to buy a ticket and someone will strike up a conversation with you, and you can just talk to people and no one will look at you like you're crazy, which is a little bit different in say in
Yeah.
London.
Yeah.
You don't make eye contact, and or in Germany where so generally that the openness and friendliness, I really miss that, and I really notice the difference.
Yeah. I've only noticed that I've noticed that in new ways recently, because I've actually found in general Dutch folks to be in our community welcoming. I have no, or I shouldn't say welcoming, because it is very hard to make Dutch friends. I have found Dutch folks to be very friendly, very attentive and caring. I've had good experiences. What I have noticed along the lines of what you're describing is that I totally get the stereotype of like the loud, obnoxious American. Totally get that. That's fair. But what I was telling Jeremiah recently was that I think that there's a sadness, that kind of the enthusiasm of that some Americans can bring is off-putting to people. We've had experiences in which we weren't even, our voices weren't particularly loud. We weren't making comments about things we didn't know about, but we were just enthusiastic about having a conversation with someone. And I'm also an introvert, so like I can understand how, like, depending on the context, that could be off-putting. But I do remember feeling sad that, like, despite being an introvert, I think that I'm someone who can be enthusiastic.
You're a very expressive
person,
yes.
and I've noticed over recent months that that is sometimes strange or sometimes even off-putting for folks. And so that's been a little bit sad. And I do miss that about the States, that there can be like an enthusiasm and engaging in people that's really lovely.
Yeah. It's exactly, it's the enthusiasm it's infectious. But on the whole, I feel it's how you approach people. You'll get that back. If you are smiling and friendly, people usually are happy to smile back at you. So, and you get grouchy Americans too. So happy. And hey, I'm on the East Coast now, so it's a little bit different to Texas.
New Jersey and Boston. So
yeah, it's a bit of a different vibe here. But what else? What else do you miss about the US? Anything else?
I miss NyQuil, which makes me sound more addictive than I am. No, I really miss NyQuil.
Yeah.
I miss CVS actually.
So NyQuil is if you want to describe that to the non-American listeners.
It is
it's a decongestant that has go ahead.
It's a medication that I would describe it as a catch-all medication for if you have a cold or the flu or anywhere in between, that like helps you to sleep well. And the tagline, if you've seen the commercials, is, at least unless they've changed it, is NyQuil, the best sleep you've ever had with a cold medicine. And I actually don't get colds very often, but occasionally I take it because it's like a very good sleeping aid. Not particularly like addictive or dangerous like alcohol or something else.
Yeah.
So I miss NyQuil. You can't get that here.
It's medications, it's such a funny thing because so many expats say that, and they will, when they go back and visit, they'll bring back all the stuff. I do the same. I go to Germany and I buy my aspirin there because it's not the same. I get a certain type that works and I know it works, and I can't get it here. So it's really funny. It used to be more food things that people bring back, but it seems to be medications. Yeah, so you're not the only one.
Well, my parents are visiting, and I've already told my mom, please bring my NyQuil.
Yeah, I need to email them and see if they can bring me Zyrtec.
So what about the Netherlands? What do you absolutely love about being there? What do you love about the Dutch people?
Yeah, I love. This is gonna be a bit of a cop-out answer, but I just love that we're here, and like being in a space that is very walkable. We don't have bikes yet.
You've been there a year. How can that be?
We're bad Dutch expats, but no, just how everyone how few cars there are through Utrecht, how everyone is either walking or riding their bikes. I really enjoy not relying on my car, and also having really good public transit here too. The Dutch train system is fantastic. So we're able to get just anywhere in the country within 2.5 hours. So it's really nice.
Yeah, you stole my answer. I was going to say that I haven't driven, and I didn't drive in Boston because I used public transit, and I actually think Boston transit is decent. But whenever I had to go out of the city, I would still have to drive. And I just love that I haven't driven.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I'll steal your answer. Yeah, just having the opportunity to be in a new space and to have some time to digest it, which is great, because it's been, I'm sure other expats could relate to this, although the experience is diverse. We've been here less than a year, but I only feel like I've just kind of started to settle and started to settle. And that's, I think people underestimate how long it takes to adjust to an expat kind of life, especially when you don't work for a company in that neighborhood. So you don't have the same ins that somebody else would. So I just love that we're here and we're doing it.
So what's the plan? How have you given yourself a time limit, or what's your kind of ultimate plan?
Right. So our visa ends next fall, or at least our initial pass ends next fall. We are taking a 6-week hiking trip through Austria and Slovenia later this summer. And when Julia and I both use hiking as a way to kind of talk about like the future of our relationship, like next steps, things we want to like delve into, how we want to do that. So I imagine that will be a big part of that conversation. You know, I imagine that we'll move back to the States soon, but yeah, who knows?
Yeah. Depends on the day. And it feels good to not know.
Yeah.
So one final question, the one I always ask my guests at the end. Is there anything that you do, anything special that you do when you really miss your home country, you really crave that connection with your country or your people? Anything special, like a recipe you cook or a ritual, tradition, anything?
Oh, that's
a really good question.
Do you have an answer?
I need a minute. Do you?
Yeah.
It's weird because like I don't know that. Oh, actually, yes, I do. I get on Zillow and or like realtor.com and do my Zillow porn and some of the some of the different towns that I'd like to potentially move to when we move back to the US. So I actually very much have an interest.
I love that. So Zillow porn, I will put that on my list. Things people do. Love it.
I don't think I have something specific because on my hard days, I have not been particularly homesick.
Yeah.
So I actually have not had many homesick days, which is its own kind of hard thing because sometimes I'm like, oh, it's kind of sad that I'm not like more homesick. But maybe I would say the one food that I miss would be Reese's peanut butter cups. They're hard to find. So
although the Jumbo around the corner from us has recently started selling big packs of Reese's peanut butter cups.
Probably eat a Reese's peanut butter cup. And actually, I would say going on walks and calling my friend Grace, and we're in regular contact anyway, but she's one of the people who's lived internationally. So eating a Reese's peanut butter cup, going on a walk, and then like talking to someone with whom I can be totally unfiltered. That's my go-to. Taking walks has always been like a source of comfort for me.
Yeah. And you're saying talking to someone unfiltered, that's such an essential thing, isn't it? Because that's, as an expat, meeting new people, there's always a filter.
Yeah.
Such a relief when you can, when you have someone who you can vent to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Love it. Okay, well, it's been so much fun. Well,
yes,
it just sounds wrong to say it's been so much fun talking to you because we really dived deep. But yeah, I really enjoyed talking to you. So, yes, one thing. Where can people find you?
We are online at Sexvangelicals. So our website is www.sexvangelicals.com. We're pretty active on Instagram at Sexvangelicals, and we also have a Substack, sexvangelicals.substack.com. And we are in the midst of getting a couple of new series out on the podcast. We release episodes every week. So this summer we're looking at how to build a healthy long-term ongoing relationship. We're doing a series on that. And we're going to talk about, I think we're talking about books as well.
Possibly.
TBD. So.
Okay, TBD. Yeah, well, take care and enjoy your Friday evening. I realize it's really late where you are. And have a great weekend.
Yes, you too. It was so good to meet you.
Thank you so much, Steph. Good to see you.
Thank you. What a conversation this was. I actually had to step away from it and leave it for a few days before sitting down to edit it and record my final bits and pieces. Thank you again, Julia and Jeremiah, for this powerful episode. I love that you're doing what you're doing. And if you, the listeners, are interested in my guests' work, then listen to their podcast, The Sexvangelicals, and check out their website. I've included all the links in the show notes. What I do want to add is that I know we are talking a lot about how dire, how awful sex education in the United States is, and how ignorant and repressed it all seems in comparison to Europe, for example. But of course, this is a huge generalization, and there are obviously a lot of progressive Americans too, and they are just as enraged by the system and backwards politics as I am. And I know also from conversations with my European friends that it's not all roses over there either, and sex education in general leaves a lot to be desired. And I know the rates of sexual assault and rape are not going down anywhere. Julia makes a reference to a documentary I mentioned, a Texas documentary I mentioned, and I actually cut that out in the end because when it came up, I just could not remember the name. So I decided to leave it for this part. It is called Cusp. It was made in 2021 and it was shot over a summer somewhere in the middle of Texas, following a group of girls of around 15, 16 years old as they spend their days, and it's pretty shocking how they seem to be just drifting and with no real idea of what they actually want and don't want, and or rather they do talk about that, but at the same time they're very kind of resigned to the fact that it's just not going to happen and for them, and they're also incredibly casual and resigned about the fact that sexual abuse and rape are everywhere. It's really chilling to watch. There's this one scene where they are discussing whether they want to go to this party, and one girl's like, I don't really want to, basically knowing that she would have to deal with some sort of assault or at least the risk of it. She says, well, girls, you can always say no, but they're still gonna do it. Yeah, and then this other girl pipes in and says, yes, girls are scared to say no. And the documentary maker asks why, and the girl just shrugs and says, guys are powerful. And that really sums it up. Yeah, anyway, I would recommend it. I don't know where. I know it's on Showtime here in the US, I think. You'll be able to see a trailer on YouTube, and I've included a link in the show notes as well as a couple of newspaper articles. Yeah, it just really hit a nerve, and I've heard so many upsetting stories from within my circle of friends and acquaintances that, well, I think conversations need to be had, and it's important not to be silent. But I'm going to be silent now. I've talked way too much and I'm going to shut up now. My next episode will be a completely different topic, and I'm hoping it'll be out within the next couple of weeks too. And that is it from me for today. Take care and see you next time.